Welcome to Powered by Her, exploring the stories of how area women power their business. Hear from the growing network of female entrepreneurs of the Upper Cumberland with your host Tiffany Anton, director of Biz Foundry. Powered by Her starts now.
Welcome to Powered by Her in the Hinson Oakley Podcast Center. I'm Tiffany Anton with the Biz Foundry, and I'm Andrea Kruszka, owner, CEO, CFO, CMO of Bright Leaf Photography in today. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks for having me in.
So Bright Leaf Photography is a nature photography. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, nature and landscapes.
Beautiful scenery and places and buildings but not necessarily people as much.
Yeah, no, I don't like taking pictures of people.
People is not your thing. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're a fellow Michigan gal.
Yes,
like
Great
myself.
Lakes for life.
We're going to apologize right now for our nasaliness on the podcast, but we just can't get rid of it.
It's with us forever.
So how long have you not been in Michigan?
I'm not used to hearing it that way. It's
so
usually, how long have you been in Tennessee? And so I've been in Tennessee almost
it's the same answer.
8 years. I know, but that really threw me. Almost 9 years now. Oh, my God.
So you've been down here and you were in Nashville area for a while and then
Yes.
like in the middle of rural.
Yeah, I lived in Hartsville, which is about 3,000 people. It's very, very small. That's where I had goats.
On a farm with baby goats. And so, and then you came to Tennessee Tech. You got a job there. And so, and so this, and you've kind of struggled with this a little bit. This is your quote unquote side hustle.
Yes.
Because you have a hard time wearing the entrepreneurship hat.
Yeah. Which is funny because, in my full-time job, I work with entrepreneurs on a daily basis. And so I'm always like, oh, well, I'm not doing what you do. And this isn't my full source of income. And so it's a struggle to not feel that imposter syndrome.
Well, and you do a really good job of like what your job is similar at Tech as to what I do at the Biz Foundry. But I really feel like myself, I'm a cheerleader.
Yeah. Yes, 100%.
And so you're this huge cheerleader, a huge advocate, a huge support system for these entrepreneurs. And yet you can't give it to yourself sometimes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So why, what do you think it is about taking pictures or a photography business that makes you feel like it's not legitimate enough?
I think part of it is because I'm not doing sessions for people. I'm not doing headshots. I'm not doing weddings. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm literally going out into the woods or on top of a mountain and taking pictures. And so it's something I'd be doing anyway. I just happen to be selling them and making a little money off all my time.
Well, I think sometimes it's hard when you love what you're doing so much to think of it as work.
Yes.
And so, you want to get up and go to a sunrise and a hike, you would want to do that anyway. But then to feel like, okay, this is my job. Maybe not, that doesn't feel right saying that. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. It feels like I shouldn't be having this much fun while I'm working.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. So did you graduated from high school in Michigan?
Yes.
And you came down here your parents were down here?
Yeah, my parents retired here. My sister moved here, and I didn't want to move to Cookeville immediately because it felt a little small after living in the Detroit area. So I went to Nashville at first, and then a whole series of events led me to Cookeville.
So you just had a job in Nashville.
Yeah.
And that's but you want to kind of get closer to the family. And
yeah.
And so in your college track has been...
let's just say by the time I'm done, I could have probably 10 doctorates, but I'll have a bachelor's degree. So,
which I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Why do you feel the need? What's your purpose now? So you're back in school now.
Yes.
What's your purpose now of going back?
A lot of it is working at the university. I always feel like, oh, wow, these students are also much smarter than me. And I was like, yeah, it feels very weird giving advice and playing a mentorship role to students when if they ask, I'm like, well, no, I don't have my degree, but stay in school.
Right.
So
do you think that you have a hard time do you think you're going to get anything with this piece of paper? Do you think I know that you work with the university, so hopefully they're not going to listen. But, I'm a huge advocate. I do. Yes, there is value in getting a degree, but there's a lot of value. It's okay to not get a degree. And I think so many people are so forced into, oh, you're good at XYZ. No, I'm guessing, you never thought I could grow a photography business.
Right.
And you don't really need a college degree to grow a photography business.
Yeah.
You're doing it right now.
Yeah. I think a lot of why I want to get the degree is just, it's a goal I have for myself. It's not
list.
Anyone else doing it for me or saying, hey, you have to do this or we're going to fire you. There's none of that. My boss is very supportive and is all about me getting it. But if I stopped tomorrow, I don't think he'd really care. I don't know. I'll ask him about it.
So if going back to kind of little Andrea, maybe elementary, middle school, what was she like? What were your goals? What were your aspirations?
Well, she was always in a tree reading a book. Super shy, did not talk to people. I was like the little girl in the back of the class who kept my head down and didn't want to talk to anyone. But I was really good at math and science and reading. I didn't know what I wanted. I wanted to do everything.
You were a nerd?
I was a super nerd. I'm still a super nerd. And anyone who knows this, who knows me, knows that. So no shame.
So what did you think you would do? Did you think you would start a business
I think I wanted to be an astronaut or a teacher or a space cowboy. So it's just really anything.
Space cowboy. Okay.
I like boots.
So where did the aspiration come from of really deciding, okay, I'm going to make a photography business. I'm going to do something that doesn't look like what normally, quote unquote, people think of a photography business. Where did that inspiration come from?
So a lot of it was I did the 52 hike challenge in 2018. So I did 52 hikes over the course of a year.
Which, in case we aren't really thinking about it, that's one a week.
Yes, one a week, 52 weeks in a year. And while I was doing that, I was just taking pictures the whole time because I've always loved taking pictures. I took classes in film photography, one of my first forays into college, maybe the second or third, I'm not sure. But so I've always had a camera in my hand. And when I was out doing all these hikes and out in nature, it was just kind of a way to bring that home with me. So I just kept at it. And then eventually one of my friends who happens to be an artist, Emily Newman, who's been on the Powered by Her podcast before, she was like, why aren't you selling these yet? And I was like, great idea. I can make a little extra money. And that's how that started. So
you just, and we've talked about this a little bit, you and I personally, but you started by just taking cell phone pictures.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit, again, this is this imposter syndrome kind of thing. You've kind of been like, I just don't really like to put that out there. And why is that?
There's a lot of people who think that taking pictures, you have to have the big fancy camera and you have to have all the lights and you've got to get your tripod set up and your shutter release and all these things. And it has taken me a long time to accept the fact that for a long time, I didn't have a camera. I couldn't afford to buy a new camera. So I was just using my cell phone and it takes great pictures. And you have to be able to understand composition and lighting and color to be able to take pictures that people are gonna connect to. So it took a long time, but I kind of got past that just in time to buy my own new camera.
How did you get through that negative self-talk? Like, what did you just keep trying to close your eyes to it and keep going, or?
I let all my friends kind of kick my butt into accepting the fact that I was doing a good job, even just with the cell phone.
You need a lot of you need friends that kick your butt a little bit.
Yes. And weirdly enough, you're one of them. So we've had this conversation before.
In case you're just joining us, we have Andrea Kruszka with Brightleaf Photography in today. And so you you're taking pictures with your cell phone. You decided to start a business. And so not only were you just taking these pictures and selling, the images, you started really putting them on canvases and really having products out there. And so you started an Etsy shop. Mm-hmm. And part of that was going through a course at the Biz Foundry, right? Yeah,
I did the Etsy entrepreneurship course through the Biz Foundry and Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. And
how did that, again, kind of give you the strength and confidence to...
I learned a lot. There were things that I never would have expected, like, okay, if you put these out here and if you, do keywords, and I've worked in marketing, I know about keywords and SEO and everything, but it just never clicked that, hey, this is exactly what I'm doing. So just having the insight from people who've been through it was very helpful for me.
You had to kind of turn the mirror on yourself. Like we said, you worked in entrepreneurship with other people and supported them, and you know how to give the advice, but then kind of turning the mirror on yourself is really tough.
Yeah, it is. It's like Jeff likes to say, your football coach should have played a little football.
That is a Jeff Brown-ism. Yes. And so it definitely, yes, it now that you're in it, how has that changed your job, your day job approach, and how can you help out other entrepreneurs?
I think one of the big things is I have a lot more empathy, especially with the clients I work with who are going through working 2 jobs or maybe 3 and doing their business as a side hustle. And I'm like, hey, I get it now. Before I was like, why can't you just get this done? Oh, yeah, now I know. Like, yeah. I'm working 40, 50 hours a week and still trying to do this.
Yeah.
And taking classes. So,
yeah. So think about a time. So it's been about 2 or so years since you really legitimized things.
About 1.5 years.
Okay. And think about a time that maybe you wanted to give up and you thought, I can't do this. What happened? Tell me.
The first Friday of Art Prowl last November.
So Art Prowl is an event that we do, a community event that they set up art in different
locations throughout
restaurants
town.
And businesses and really support the art community through our business community.
Right. And so I was stationed at Biz Foundry, surprising. And the first night we weren't getting a lot of traffic in. I only made a couple sales and I was like, oh, this is like the 3rd show I've ever done, and this is going horribly.
And you have this negative talk saying, I'm not good enough and I'm not doing the right things.
Exactly. And
you might have gone home and cried a little bit.
I did go home and cry a little bit. There's no shame. I cry all the time. So I went home and cried a little bit. And then my sister kind of talked me down and she's like, it's the first day. It's a Friday night. People will be up tomorrow. And the next day it was fine. And I was really happy with how everything went. But it's riding those waves of it's not always going to be fantastic. You're not always going to make the sale. You're not always going to have people connecting with what you're doing. But the ones who do make it worth it.
Well, and I mean, when you're putting such a personal touch on things, so this is, a hobby that you do, you get up early in the morning sometimes and you'll do sunset pictures or you'll do a hike to the top of a mountain to take the right picture. So this is really, really personal to you.
Yeah.
And then for people not to connect with that, that can be really tough.
It is. It's because I feel if you're not connecting with what I'm doing, you're not connecting with me. And that's something I've had to work through,
and sometimes as women, we take that on real personally.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Of just really thinking, well, they don't like me.
Yeah.
And how do you try and separate yourself, Andrea, from Brightly Photography? Any advice?
I remember that I'm delightful. And so if anyone doesn't like me, that's their problem, not mine. But joking aside, I have to remember, like, they're seeing this tiny part of me. And yes, it's something I love and something I do a lot of, but it's just a small part. And they don't know anything about who I am outside of that. They just say, this picture of a river, I don't like it. And that's fine. That's their preference. So,
well, maybe they don't like Tennessee either. Maybe they don't like
Oh, why wouldn't you like Tennessee? It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful places. And one of my favorite pictures that you've done is of the Cream City sign with a sunset behind it. I've used it as my Zoom background before. But I think to me, you can do nature. You can go out and get a sunset at a lake. But then you can also do kind of iconic community pieces as well. So you were out recently at Wildwood Marina. They just did a grand opening and you were taking some pictures there, and just that natural image of just things where it's like you can see yourself being at these places.
That's really what I try to do. And one of the things I love is when someone gets a print or a canvas or something from me and I hear back from them afterwards and they're like, it makes me feel like I'm there again. I do so many in a lot of the state parks around here, and a lot of people, especially who grew up around here, grew up going to Cumberland Mountain State Park and seeing the bridge there. And so knowing that it takes them back to that time of being a kid, that is really rewarding for me.
Have you gotten to the point where you've been commissioned at all of like, hey, I want a picture of this or that? Or
I've had a couple people ask me to come out to their land and their property and take pictures. So none of that's worked out yet because of all the coronavirus stuff going on. Even though I'm outside while I'm doing pictures, it's still, some people are still a little strange about it. And I'm not crazy about going up and meeting a stranger. I'd rather take someone with me to go look at 60 acres of woods and not do that alone. Safety first.
But that's that again is just another step up of legitimacy of your business, of people see the talent that you have, see what you're doing, and are looking for you to come capture that special image for them. And it doesn't have to necessarily look like a wedding, a baby, a family portrait session. People feel that connection with maybe their land or a home or a bridge, like you said, that those pieces or those landscapes are really important for them in their life as well.
I hope so. That's what I go for.
So again, going back to, did you took some photography You took some photography classes in college. Were you kind of artistic at all in high school? Or guessing that's a no.
I can barely draw a straight line.
But that's not the only art.
I know it's not like the only thing, but I've always been I've generally been a pretty analytical person. I was more of a writer than a visual person. But then I started taking the classes because I thought, hey, it'll be fun. And
it was just a credit you needed.
Yeah, I needed like a fine arts credit or something. And I ended up taking a few classes. I actually learned on my dad's old SLR from the 70s, which I still have
like
to
a
this
film
day.
camera. People are like, what's film?
What's film?
Yeah. Those 35 millimeter rolls, and you would pull them out. And
where
all
you got your little canister that then as you got older, you
would put googly eyes on and like a cotton ball on its head and stuff. Well, not when you got old. That was when
you were younger.
Yeah. Maybe I did it when I was older.
No, I used to save if I had extra money, I'd always put them in that, and then I'd be super excited to find $20.
Oh, there you go. That was a good little hiding thing. You were like, it could be film or it could be $20. It's kind of like when you put on an old winter coat. And,
that's the best feeling.
There's some money in the pocket.
Yeah.
So you didn't really, as a kid, you didn't really think that photography would be in your plans. Did you ever think you would own a business?
I always wanted to own a little cafe because one of my many other hobbies is I cook and bake a lot. Anyone who follows me on Instagram has seen this and gotten mad at me for making them hungry. So that was always a goal. But then as I got older, I realized that's something I love to do, that I do to de-stress. And I wouldn't want that to be a business because I feel like it would just stress me out.
How do you think that you can separate? How did you come to that knowledge of separating out hobbies and business?
Watching other people do it and really struggle. People who were like, oh, I really love babysitting, so I'm going to open a daycare, and then they hate their lives. And I can't imagine. I love having a job where I go to work every day and I love it.
Well, and I think just making sure that you know what's good for you and your personal soul and kind of protecting that a little bit.
Yeah. And I know me, where if I had to wake up every morning and make 100 cupcakes, I'd lose my mind.
Well, and I think as women and women entrepreneurs, especially, it's most of them get into whatever business it is as their passion. But that self-care part of life is so important too. And so to make sure that you have something that's sacred to your overall personal growth or your self-care. And it sounds like for you, that's cooking. Yeah. And making sure that you keep that kind of sacred to you.
Yes, exactly.
Because how else are you going to kind of take care? I mean, if you don't, you're not going to cook all day and then come home and cook some more to de-stress. Yeah. So you take away that element. So what other things do you do for self-care?
I run a lot. That's been a pretty recent development.
You're on a 16-day streak?
Yes, and I've done at least a mile every day. They're really slow, and there's a lot of cussing involved, but I'm doing it, and it's become a very zen thing for me.
Well, and I think, again, it's just really finding that outlet that is just, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it. I'm getting the endorphins going, and this is good for me, and it's good stress outlet, and it might not be the thing I love the most, and it might not look the way it looks to somebody else. You know, I think
it looks ridiculous.
Well, and you just said, you know,
I'm totally happy
you have
with
this thought it's slow or whatever. And it's like you're comparing yourself to you should compare yourself to yourself. And I think a lot of times as women, it's hard with social media the way it is, and to not compare to other people and just to try and compare to yourself and who you were yesterday or a year ago. And
it's all about taking care of your own journey and not trying to compare yourself to everyone. And I'm sure we all struggle with it, but I feel like I've kind of gotten a handle on it lately.
I think over the last couple of years, you really dove into self-growth and trying to kind of find your happy spot. And what advice would you have for other women about that, about self-care or personal growth?
I think one of the most important things is to look at where you are in your own journey and your own life and your own emotions, because it's so easy. I mean, 5 years ago, I was in a terrible relationship and I was unhappy with just about every part of my life. And now, 5 years later, my life doesn't look anything like what I expected. And, you know, when you're younger, you think that when you're in your 30s, you're going to be married, you're going to have kids, and everything's going to be great, and you're going to have a great job, and the house, and the picket fence, and the dog, and all that. And it took me until the last couple of years to realize I don't want any of that. Yeah. I'm perfectly happy how I am. And when you start comparing yourself to someone who's doing the more typical journey, that's where you start to lose yourself.
I think it is. There's so much societal pressure to look a certain way for your life to be whatever and you know, just like we've talked about, your business to look a certain way. For a photography business, there's societal pressure. What do you mean you don't take portraits? What do you mean you don't take headshots? Like, how are you a photography business? And so there's just so much societal pressure. What's one tip on like kind of shedding that societal pressure that you can think of? Like, what is there anything that stand out or any pivotal moments for you over the past few years that really were like, okay, I'm good? Like,
I think it was just after my ex and I split up, and one of my best friends told me, like, hey, I haven't seen you have an actual smile in 4 years. And that really got me thinking, like, wow, I really wasn't happy, and I never would have thought that.
But I was doing the things that
I was doing the things. I had the corner office, and I had the relationship and the dogs and the house and everything. And then now I'm like completely opposite of that, and it's perfect, and I love it, and that's what I want.
Right.
So I think it's getting in tune with what you want and what you need and saying screw it to the rest of the world, basically.
And making sure that you understand that life is, it's almost like making sure everybody has their own Cinderella story.
Yes.
And not everybody's shoes are glass slippers.
Yeah.
So,
mine are some flip flops for sure.
And making sure that you're putting on your right pair of shoes.
Yes.
And
I love that. That's a great analogy.
Look at me.
Smart.
But I think it's so interesting because it's like I have a background in teaching. I was a high school teacher. Never did I ever think, and I really loved what I was doing. But I literally got to go to a goat farm today and have a sample of beer at lunchtime and come
so
do
jealous.
Some radio interviews. And so I've had like just a great day and I just love what I do. But I think maybe sometimes I've in my life too, I've put on somebody else's shoes and it's like, those aren't my shoes and they don't fit quite right, but I'll make them work because they're kind of okay. But making sure that you're walking the life that you're intended for.
Yeah, 100% that. I know I tried to force my feet into some red high heels for a while and that just wasn't me. So
right. And I think just kind of learning how to own it. And I think, but I do think it's okay to try on the red high heels and see, hey, is this me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I like some aspects of it and maybe I'll wear, red flats instead, or, and figuring out kind of what works for you and what fits for you and what's right for your life.
Exactly. I mean, being alive, it should never be over. You should always be trying to change and grow and figure out if something's better for you than something else. So I think that's probably my biggest advice for other females is it is absolutely never too late. Like you can always start over. You can always try something else.
I love some stories of just, kind of senior moms or whatnot that are, kind of retirement age. And then they're like, well, I just want to do something else. So they start, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like you said, it's never too late. It's never, and to find that happiness that they just didn't even know that they were lacking in life. And so we're kind of towards our later 30s. And I think
no one thinks that though. We look real young.
I know. But it is really cool to find, I'm 3 years into my career. You're, a few years into your career, a few years into an entrepreneurship. And it's like the sky's the limit now. And it feels sometimes like we're behind the game. But I think, like you said, it's never too late to kind of be happy and.
Exactly. And you're playing your own game. You're not competing against anyone except for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I might be a little behind what other people are, but I'm doing just fine for where I want to be.
Right. So in case you missed it, we have Andrea Kruszka with Bright Leaf Photography. How can we find you? How can people find you?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Bright Leaf Photos. And then you can find me on Etsy at etsy.com/shop/Brightleaf Photos or just brightleafphotos.com.
There you go. Are you on LinkedIn too?
Only as my personal one.
Okay. Yeah. So
you can find me if you can spell my name.
There you go. Those Polacks.
We're trouble.
So people can find you. So you also do have, you are a cheerleader and a supporter of entrepreneurship and small business in the Upper Cumberland as well. So if people need resources like that, you're a great person to contact.
Yes. And for that, you can always reach me at tntech.edu/TCRI.
There you go. Center for Rural Innovation. So thank you so much for coming on today. It was great to have you and a great chat.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Powered by Her. Download your favorites and keep up with new episodes in the Hints and Oakley Podcast Center.